There's a lot baked into that July 25th phone call between President Trump and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky that's now at the center of a whistleblower complaint and, of course, an impeachment inquiry. But if you look at the call summary released by the White House, there's one point that's especially peculiar and kind of seems out of left field. It's when the president mentions something called CrowdStrike. He says, "I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine. They say CrowdStrike. I guess you have one of your wealthy people. The server, they say Ukraine has it." Okay, so what is he talking about? From this, it's not exactly clear what the president wants Ukraine to do, but it does start to make some sense after a little bit more context. CrowdStrike is a cybersecurity company that does digital forensics, and they've actually been in the news before.
Welcome to day one of the Democratic National Convention. There was chaos on the floor below us this afternoon.
Thousands of hacked emails leaked to WikiLeaks rocked the Democratic National Committee.
Yeah, so the DNC asked CrowdStrike to investigate, and the company ultimately found that Russian groups hacked the network and stole emails, which they then published to WikiLeaks. And U.S. intelligence officials confirmed that. And those findings actually became part of Robert Mueller's indictment of a dozen Russian intelligence officials. But of course, the world of conspiracy theories tells a different tale. Basically, since 2016, right-wing blogs, news websites, and none other than Roger Stone have tried to spread the idea that Democrats and CrowdStrike framed Russia in order to discredit Trump's victory. They claim that evidence of this has been hidden on a DNC server somewhere in Ukraine, possibly by CrowdStrike founder Dmitry Alpertovich, whom they often refer to as a Ukrainian billionaire. Remember Trump mentions a wealthy Ukrainian in that phone call? Here's the thing though, Dmitry was actually born in Moscow, not Ukraine, and he's an American citizen. His company is based in Sunnyvale, California. And when it comes to the server, first of all, there isn't one single server that holds the key to all of this. The DNC said they decommissioned 140 servers and rebuilt 11 in the wake of the hack. One of them is actually on display at the DNC office. Here it is in a New York Times photo right next to a filing cabinet that was broken into during the Watergate scandal. CrowdStrike and U.S. intelligence officials both examined all that tech and shared the same findings, that Russians hacked the DNC. And even Trump's own former Homeland Security advisor has said there's no basis to this theory.
It is not only a conspiracy theory, it is completely debunked.
But the president has been fixated on this for years now.
Where is the server? I want to know, where is the server and what is the server saying?
So, to summarize, CrowdStrike is a cybersecurity company that helped uncover Russian meddling when investigating the DNC hack during the 2016 election. A far-right conspiracy theory alleges that the company framed Russia in order to discredit Trump's presidency. And the theory hinges on the belief that this information is sitting on a missing DNC server that made its way to Ukraine. And that is what Trump seems to reference when he asks the Ukrainian president for a favor on that now infamous July phone call.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.